Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Needham Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. First on our agenda for the evening is the minutes from the July meeting. Has everybody read the minutes?
Yes.
Any comments, questions on it? Entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Sure. I'll
Shit.
second. Sure.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. First on our regular agenda is the continuation of the hearing, 20 Alderbrook Lane. Correct, everybody's here?
Everybody's here.
You're not on Zoom now? You're
I'm
welcome
not on
back
Zoom.
in the States. Welcome
you.
back.
Thank you.
So this is a continuation of the hearing, 20 Alderbrook Lane, in the single residence B zoning district, and they're seeking a special permit under 1.46 to allow the change, extension, alteration, and enlargement of a lawful pre-existing non-conforming structure for relief of a right setback from 9.6 feet to 9.1 feet, and the left setback from 11 to 9.9 feet. And this is associated with the addition and alterations of your home. So when we left the hearing and you were on Zoom land, we had some confusion on what the plan showed and what the building inspector and you had discussed. And so why don't you take us and bring us up to date, because you did submit some additional filings.
Okay, would you like me to introduce myself?
Absolutely.
I'm Benny Bear, I'm the architect for the project. With me here is Vada, who works with me, and the owners, Amit and Neta Schwartz. We've clarified with the building inspector, and I'd like to point out that the numbers you just read are not the numbers that the building inspector now has determined to be the right side setback. And we have drawings that were submitted, and we have printed copies here. The existing
Oh, thank you.
right side setback.
So we have something right here. Is this different from what was sent about a week ago?
No, it's not. It's just a
The same.
reprint. And
So is there a date here that we can just verify?
7/26.
This is just a larger version of what we received.
it's a larger version. There's been no
It looks
changes.
like you've added some color. I think you've highlighted some things in
We've
yellow.
highlighted,
That's helpful.
highlighted,
Yeah, that's
we've
helpful to us, yes.
highlighted the right existing and proposed setback and the left existing and proposed setback. This is the only relief we're seeking for this project right now. On the right side, the building inspector determined that the most non-conforming is 6.7 feet on the deck. We're proposing.
So, I'm sorry, when you're saying right and left, so we're looking at Alderbrook on the right side. So just orient us, if you could, on this plan, now we're in person, just to walk us through where we're talking about. Is it the left or is it the right of it?
When you stand on Alderbrook Lane and you look at the house, there's a deck in the rear. That deck has a corner that's 6.7 feet from the right lot line. That's existing. We're proposing to enlarge that deck, but keep the same dimension, 6.7 feet. So that's on the right side.
I would call it on the left side.
Well,
Because
the plan is on the left side.
But maybe just to get oriented, because I get confused, you're saying I'm looking at the house, and to my left is the deck that you've described. It's right there in front, so I call it the left
I
side.
think this is,
we're-
the front of the house is this way.
But if the plan is, I'm just using the plan straight. Okay, that's why I'm getting confused left and right, but we're now oriented to it, and at least I'm focused with you. You're keeping it 6.7, and there's been a modification to it.
That's right,
Yes.
that's correct. And on the left side, we
Or
are,
your left, or your right.
You're right.
you're right.
Closest to the road, to Brook Road, okay, Alderbrook Road, correct?
Well, if you
Closest to the
stand on
road.
Alderbrook, it's on the left side. If you look at the house, it's the, where the entrance to the house is, the entry door.
Closest to the road, yeah, okay.
That's right. So on the left side, The setback existing is 11 feet even, and we're proposing to construct a canopy with a support at 9.9 feet on the left side. And this is all the relief we're seeking.
Does someone have the building inspector's letter? I have misplaced
I
it
have
in
Here,
this
I have it.
sea of paperwork that I had it all right in front of me. And now it's gone. So did you say 6'6" or 6'7"?
6'7".
6'7", okay. So you confirmed it, the plans show it, the building inspector in his letter of August 5th has confirmed this. The only other comment was the planning board had no comment. So that's the only additional comment I've received. Is there anyone here in the hearing room tonight who has anything to say, or in the Zoom world?
We have no public in terms of panelists. So there's no hands raised
Okay.
and there's nobody.
Does anybody in the board have any questions before I close the public hearing?
No, with comments, but I'll certainly close the
Okay.
hearing first, sure.
All right, so we'll close the public hearing, and now we will deliberate. Howard?
Thank you. No, so listen, I appreciate what you're trying to do. You're trying to upgrade your home. You're making a modest, slight enlargement to a non-conforming use, but you're operating under 1.46, which allows that type of modification if it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. We've heard no opposition. Seems quite reasonable to me. I think the biggest problem was that understanding exactly where it was with the measurements. You've come back, and I find this plan with the highlights is very helpful. So I'm certainly in favor of this, and I wish you luck on that.
No comments? No questions? Nothing to say? Peter?
Nope.
Okay. At that point, I entertain a motion. Howard?
Certainly, thank you. Okay. Move that the applicant's special permit petition under 146 of the zoning bylaw to allow the change or extension or alteration, enlargement of the lawful pre-existing non-conforming structure for the relief of the right setback and then the left setback, as set forth on this most recent plan, be approved.
Is there a second? I'm going to ask you to,
I'll second.
okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Congratulations
Thank you.
All right.
for your patience and get it
Thank
straight.
you.
Welcome back to the States.
All right.
As well, because
All right.
When is the next,
All right, you can take the summer off now.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right. So let me go get the next applicant. Oh, there's George.
So Howard, since you made the motion, you would be the delegated reviewer
We'll
of
look forward
that.
to that opportunity, yeah.
Howard's the delegated reviewer.
Hey,
All
question.
right.
So when we have decisions, is the intent that all of us get them even if we weren't even at the meeting?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, because I think I missed one of the rounds. I wasn't sure if that was a policy change, but I think it makes sense.
I think we just cut you out on that one.
Purpose.
You were in a cruise having fun, and we weren't.
Actually, we had no internet connection for most of
I
it.
think it was a punishment. I don't know. I think everybody should get the
Oh,
decision.
yeah. All right. Even if they did not attend.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's no problem. And also, when they are filed, they're automatically posted on the website. So all the decisions, as soon as they're filed, they are available to the public as well as to you. So if you know, I'll get you copies, but it's there as well.
I'll never think to look, but thank you for the great effort to put these decisions together in initial form.
Okay, next up is a continued hearing at 277 Brookline Ave, Needham Enterprises LLC, correct? And they're seeking a variance.
Street,
A what?
it's street.
So, we gotta get that straight, because this says right here in your, on the planning department says,
Oh, well, that's
Avenue.
but our agenda and everything is street.
all
That
right,
has
so
all been
let's get
changed.
some consistency in the planning department.
Yes.
George is the one that called it.
Yes, it was my fault to start with.
You started it?
Yes, I did.
You renamed it,
I
that's
started the
right.
trouble.
So is it Ave or street?
It's all the many years that I drove up and
Council,
down
is it
Brookline
avenue or
Avenue. It's street is the,
It's street.
We're not going to Fenway to Brookline Ave, all right.
that's right. We're not going to any of the hospitals or.
Single-handedly, you did this? All right, so it's a continued hearing of 277 Brookline Street by Needham Enterprises, and this is for a variance under 3.21 on other applicable sections, to seek a plan substitution of further relief pursuant to a 1951 variance for two-family use and any other relief appropriate for an existing two-family dwelling and replace it with a new two-family structure. And it's located in the single residence B zoning district. Just for the record, the planning board had no comment. I just wanted to get that into the record. Okay, George.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. George Shinta Jr. appearing on behalf of the applicant. And so this is the second hearing. As indicated, this is for a proposed two-family reconstruction at 277 Brookline Street. And this is, it was a property that was granted a variance for two-family use back in 1951. The house is now, a bit old, a bit tired, and could use some change. So my client, who acquired the property back in April, would like to tear down the building and replace it. We had some initial conversation at last month's meeting. The board continued the hearing so that we could meet with the neighbors and discuss some of the concerns and issues that were raised. As a result of the concerns and issues that were raised and the feedback we got, we have changed the plan a bit, and so I'll go over those changes with you. The fundamental request remains the same. It is still a request to demolish or reconstruct the two-family, but we have changed some of the details. So, first off, the location of the proposed new/replacement house, two-family house, has moved. We've slid it over away from the left property line by 7.5 feet. So originally we had proposed it to be a little over 14 feet from that property line, and now it's almost 22 feet from that property line. So shifted over quite a bit, that based on the concerns of the neighbor on that side. Since the revised plan was provided to you, we had some further conversation with the neighbors. They've asked us to slide the house forward a bit, and so we have committed to slide the house forward by 2 to 3 feet.
Is that shown on this plan?
It is not shown on this
okay.
plan. So that was something that came up too soon or too close to
So
the
the
hearing
plan
for us
says
to get.
25.6, it's gonna be 23.6-ish?
23 or 22.6, yeah. Right. Then the proposed new/replacement dwelling consists of 2 units, one in the front, one in the back. We took the back unit and we essentially flipped it horizontally on the property. So it used to have, or originally I should say, we proposed to have a patio and exit doors on the left side. Those are now on the right side. So so we provide less intrusion to the property on the left. The front unit remains the same layout and same footprint, everything else. The footprint of the structure itself remains the same. It's just that basically sort of the interior aspects and the doors and all that get flipped. All right, then we took the garage that's on the right side and we pushed that back about 1.5 feet. And in connection with that, we reconfigured the driveway. Originally, there were 2 sort of parallel spaces, one on either side of the driveway. And that required the people parking in those spaces to kind of, really, they would have to back out into the street. It would be hard for them to kind of maneuver on site. What we've done is we've taken those 2 spots and put them both on one side so that cars parked in those spaces can now back up inside the driveway and then turn and maneuver to head out into the street to increase visibility, sight lines, and safety.
George, can you tell me where that is on the plan? I think it's a good idea, but I'm not easily seeing it.
So it's, you can see so we got the garage here and then this on the right-hand side.
Yep.
See the 2, the little bump out like? That's the.
This was a suggestion of one of the neighbors.
Right. Well, I think a couple of neighbors mentioned they were concerned about sight
Pulling
lines
in,
and safety
yeah.
of the sidewalk. Yeah, and that was a good comment, and I think this is a much better solution. Now, there was a request to also maybe narrow the driveway, but we opted not to do that for a couple of reasons. One, that would actually make it more difficult, and we'd have to provide significantly more pavement on site to allow for maneuverability, which then sort of takes away from the idea of trying to reduce pavement and minimize sort of impervious impact. Also, though, basically, we have right now 2 spaces that don't have to back out, and we have the 2 spaces in the garage that would back out, just like any other house in Needham that has a 2-car garage. So 2 spaces are kind of like your standard, and they would back out, and then 2 can maneuver and go front out.
Can I ask a question about that? How are the garage spots allocated between the 2 townhouses and the driveway?
So it's my understanding from my client that he's going to do 1 garage space, 1 surface space for each unit.
Okay, so that newly created section of the driveway for the maneuvering around, is that for both units or gonna?
So that area on the right side of the driveway,
Yeah.
that's room there for 2 parking spaces. And then the sort of the main part of the driveway will be restricted no parking.
Okay,
So
got it.
that's available for cars to come out of the garage and also for cars on the side to back up and then maneuver out.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, we also, we spoke with the neighbor on the left, and my client is committed to installing landscaping along that line with the details to be worked out, during construction as to specific plants and so on.
I'm sorry, so the landscaping is on the left side?
On the left side, yes. Yep.
And can you tell us generally what was discussed?
So we talked about maybe doing in some arborvitae to provide, a good living fence, specifically in the area immediately off of the patio. So the front unit still has a patio on that side. So the idea being to kind of create some screening and some privacy.
Right,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes. But then also it was discussed about doing maybe some other plantings as well.
So the developer has agreed to screening.
Yes.
Right.
So that are the changes to the plan. But there's one other thing I do want to point out, because I think it's relevant to some of the comments and concerns that came up at the first hearing, and I think still persist. So we had the engineers, the surveyors, go and do a calculation for impervious surface for the existing condition today, and I compared that to what is the proposed. Existing impervious for the house, the garage, the shed, and the driveway is 4,336 square feet. Our proposed impervious, which includes the house, the garage, and the driveway, is 3,966 square feet. That's a net reduction in impervious surface of 370 square feet. In addition, my client is committed to connecting or basically pulling all the rainwater from the entire roof of the house as well as the entire roof of the garage and putting that into the stormwater infiltration system. As the board's aware, the town requires stormwater infiltration for the house. It does not require infiltration for the garage. So we're going to do the garage as well, though, because that seems to make sense and that'll help. And
So, I didn't mean to interrupt, but, so is that on a plan that's been approved by the engineering department?
so typically that's done during the building permit review process. We have showed areas for 2 infiltration structures on this plan. We have not showed all the details of the piping, the connections and all that. So that would be worked out with engineering during the review process.
Our decision can say it's conditioned upon your plan submitted to the department.
Right, exactly.
Showing tie into the garage and to the main house.
Right, right. And if for some reason, as a part of that, we have to go out and we have to check the soil, and if for some reason the soil is not sufficient to take the infiltration, then under the stormwater bylaw, we are allowed and basically told we have to connect to the town drain system. So there will either be infiltration or a direct connection to the town drain system. So all of that should substantially and meaningfully reduce drainage impacts from the property.
And the tie-in is not shown on these new plans.
That's right, that's right. Because we don't know, it will be.
Got it.
When we actually go out and do when we coordinate with engineering and we do the testing and do the final review with them, whether or not we do
But the
the
amended
infiltration.
variance or new variance or whatever we call it, I think it's an amendment to the variance. No? Did we talk about
I
that?
don't think so.
Or a plan substitution?
Right.
With
So-
some
Or
commentary?
interpretation
The-
of the variance.
The way the board has generally handled these in the past, and just to refresh your recollection, this is the fourth or fifth.
It's the fourth.
It's generally looked at as, the question is whether or not the proposal is sort of within the four corners of what was approved. And of course, in this case, in 1951, what was approved was use of the property for two-family purposes. So therefore, then the next step is, okay, if it's within the four corners, is it a, reasonable plan, and does it generally comply with the bylaw and so on? Which is why our plan complies with that provision of the bylaw that deals with two families and single-family zones, even though by the strict letter of the law, that section doesn't seem to apply.
So what have we called? Because we haven't just said, called them.
The last time we did it, we found that it was consistent with the variance, which I think was the best way.
Just an interpretation of a variance? That's what we did.
Variance interpretation.
Yeah, so-
But
That's what,
I don't know whether that works here, but that's what we did.
yeah, well, we called it an interpretation of a variance. One of these is an amendment of the variance, or modification. I don't think it just says plan substitution. That's pretty simplistic.
No, but in essence, that's what's happening.
No, I don't think so. We're imposing some other conditions
No,
as
no,
well.
no, right, so I said a plan substitution with commentary.
No, all right. I think it's an interpretation. Form over substance. We'll get to it. Anything else?
And that's it for me.
We have one more municipal comment from the building commissioner. He had no additional concerns. Anyone in the room tonight at the hearing would like to speak on the application with the plans as modified and where we are today? You're here today. Do you have anything to add to it? No? Yes, you do. You have to speak into the microphone and be live on the Needham channel. So please, and you have to speak into the microphone, so.
For recording.
Yes.
So introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Elena Choi. I'm at the left of this property, so the adjacent abutters. And I think by and large, they have been responsive to our issues. And I don't think there's much more we could have asked for other than, that had it been, sort of a horizontal design, sort of facing the street rather than a deeper design. And that way, all of our, our view would not be obstructed at all. But it is what it is, and they have been responsive, and for that, I thank them.
Good. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm Eric Gravlin. I'm at 283 Brookline Street as well. Property on the left when you're facing towards 277. I agree with what my wife has said. They've been very responsive to our concerns, and we very much appreciate that. One thing that I hadn't heard tonight that I wanted to just mention was they did offer to make the planting issue between the properties for screening, make the board's approval contingent on that happening as well. And so we would like to do that if we could. But by and large, they have been very responsive to multiple changes as we thought about things more. And for us, the process has worked, and so we're...
That was the hope for the month delay in getting together and talking.
Yeah, and so things have gone well, and we're generally pleased with the result. So
Good.
I just wanted to say
Let me ask
that.
you a quick question. I think that's a great process, and I would thank the developer as well, working together. So what do you envision? There's discussion by council about a screening along your side, arborvitae's. What was your thought?
Yeah, so the arborvitae's are fine, because that would be like directly between the house. The big concern with having the two-family there, sort of all along our property line, was that it's sort of looming large over our backyard. And if you look at the design, the side of the house that's facing us on the third floor has 3 windows wide dormer area. And so my initial thought was to keep the mature plantings that are there. There's Rose of Sharon, and there's lilacs and some other bushes which are nice in the spring when they're blooming. My more recent thoughts were maybe to have some trees that would grow up a little bit higher than what those bushes are, so that the overlook into our yard was not so clear, I guess. It's really just a privacy thing. Right now, when we sit in our backyard, we look out, almost all we see is woods. right? And so with the new two-family, we're gonna see a substantial portion of that property, and so something that was a little bit taller would be more desirable for me.
Okay, well, I think it's great that you're talking, and we'll continue to talk and design a plan, and I would hope that we have a proviso to that effect in the decision.
Excellent. One other point too was we had spoken last time about the very large and old oak tree that's between the two properties. And with the moving of the property back away from ours, the thought is that would be less likely to impact the root system of that tree, and it may be able to be saved. And so we're hopeful that that will happen as well.
Good.
So generally, everything's been very positive, and thank you all.
Thank you. Sir, did you want to say anything?
Sure.
If you come out and you're missing the Patriots exhibition game, it's important to talk.
Yeah, right.
Well, thanks for reminding, wow, good job.
That's until 9:30 maybe, or?
There was an interception on the way over here, so.
The more
Hope we
things
made an
change.
interception and not them.
No.
No.
Anyway,
Anyway, my name is Dan Valley. I'm at 304 Brookline Street. I'm the civil engineer, work for the city of Cambridge. And I think these are all great improvements. I don't know if Matt's listening, but, and Journey, yeah, it's all great. It's all an improvement. And I was trying to listen to you about what you're doing with the drainage, but it sounds like it's good news. You're taking the roof in as well. You can do some soil testing maybe, and then figure out if you can absorb the water on the site, and then maybe an overflow into the drain.
So we have to do the soil testing as a part of the
Yeah.
process for the stormwater bylaw. And depending upon what that shows, if the soil is, if it's like ledge or, clay that will take the water, then we have to connect to the town drain system. If it's gravel, if it's soil that will take the water, then we do the infiltration system. I personally love overflows, but the town doesn't really like them anymore, so they don't generally allow us to do overflows. It's kind of one, either infiltration or town connection, one or the other.
It wouldn't be infiltration to the extent you can, and then overflow.
That, my understanding is generally that the town will not allow that anymore. They used to,
Okay.
but my understanding is they don't allow that anymore.
And would there be an opportunity just to take one last look at that plan for us and the abutters? This final design plan?
Not, usually it's just reviewed through engineering, and it's a part of the building permit process, so it's not really a public process per se.
Is that a public record, George?
It is a public record, anybody can
So there
see
you
it,
go.
yeah.
So how would we know when it gets submitted that we could take a look at it?
I guess we can let you know when it's submitted.
Okay, appreciate that, but it's all positive, it's all good. I thank you, Matt, again, and trying to save the tree. And I do, with respect to the tree, again, I work for the city of Cambridge, this city, they have all kinds of arborists, and if you cut into a root, you gotta cut it. They rip at it with an excavator, they have to come right back and cut it square, or it gets infected and all that stuff, so just be careful.
thank you very
That's it.
much.
Yeah.
Anyone in the waiting room in Zoom who wants to speak for?
There are
against?
no hands raised at this point.
Okay. Any questions from the board before I close the public hearing?
No.
All right, at this point, I close the public. Sure. You have a question?
George, how tall is the garage?
Tallest in the garage. I think it can't be higher than 15 feet.
Yeah, I don't see it on the plan.
Yep.
That's what I'm
Yeah, I don't know that it's called out on the architectural drawings, but it can't be higher than 15 feet. Otherwise, it has to be set back
the full setback, right?
Yeah, and it's it's really just a two-car garage. It's not like not a garage with
a dormer.
like with an office and storage space and a shower and all that upstairs. It's not that good.
All right, no, thank you.
That it?
Yeah, I'll reserve the rest for our discussion.
One more? Sure, come on up.
I know we all fall back on arborvitaes, but, and from what Eric was saying, I think maybe something taller, maybe we could leave that without sticking just to the arborvitaes.
We're not gonna get into great details. It's
Yes, right.
plantings that
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Yes, I
But I'm
understand.
going to trim mine because they're about 20 feet tall and they grow like you can't believe.
At this point, I'd close the public hearing and we can deliberate. Peter, you reserve some commentary.
Well, I have two things. First, I think in the situations that we've dealt with before, and thank you, George, for cataloging them as always. I don't think that the original variance decision really mentioned much, if anything, about the design of what was being subjected to the variance. Clearly, that was the case in the last one, and we took great comfort from that. Here, when you read the variance decision, they talked about a set of very clear drawings that were presented to the board at the time that they voted the variance. And yes, the decision is not tied to those, but I just raised the question for consideration by the board of, we're getting close to the line of a use variance that was voted based on a specific project that was in front of the board. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. And I don't know whether we're too close or not. All right, so that's number one. The second point that I would raise in some of the other decisions, there was a limitation that there would be no further exterior changes without coming back to the board. And I wonder whether we might want to do that. But I have to confess that I do get a little tangled in how we impose conditions in the context of a decision which says this project is consistent with a prior variance, end of story. So I throw those out for consideration by the board. I don't have the answer, but I think we ought to consider it.
Okay, thank you. Howard?
So I appreciate what you're saying, Peter, and your close read of the decisions. So when I had suggested that it's, I said sort of a planned substitution with conditions, that's what I was referring to. And I think that that all of us should be proud of the cooperation of the neighbors and the developer. I think there were some relatively significant changes to accommodate. And so that process has made our decision a lot easier. So that we can say that the plans, I think this is a plan dated July 29, 24, is the one that we'll stick with. And so, and subject to perhaps a proviso regarding the mutual working out of shading and screening along your side. So I think that process has worked, but I think that to your other point, Peter, that if they were to come in with a radically different plan, I think that would be grounds for this board to assert itself and to look closely at the decision, and then to hold the applicant closer to it. But I think the input from the neighborhood as part of the standard, under 753, which ties back to the general special permit standard about fitting in with the neighborhood and not to be detrimental to the neighborhood. I think this process has worked. No, yes,
Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it sounds like the process has certainly created some dialogue. It seems like maybe not 100% satisfaction, but certainly seems like a lot of progress has been made. And I think the process sounds like it's leading to a pretty good outcome with regards to the changes that were made to the plan.
Oh, I don't deny that.
So,
I'm always happy when the developer is able to resolve issues with the neighbors. I just, I see something of a slippery slope. And I know if there's anyone who will keep track of that slippery slope, it's an experienced community attorney who's before the board often and has an encyclopedic memory of our decisions.
So I think the project is nice.
Yeah.
I think the applicant has done what the board suggested in dialogue with the community and the neighbors, and I see you probably agreed to almost everything they asked to do. So really what we're talking about is form. How do we adopt something that makes you comfortable? Because you're right, they had very specific plans. They said that. These are very specific plans. It's not a plan set dated 1951, very specific plans. So it's an interesting dilemma. I think we're probably more along with what we did in 2021 over at, what was that? On Central. And we're going to interpret the variance that it's in conformity, consistent with the original variance. And they're making improvements over the past, 50 years has gone by. And whether you call them conditions or requirements or something to that, and
Stipulations.
and then you following your thing, I think any additional modifications should come before the board. So it's the form of this. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because Peter's raised an interesting comment.
Well, on the issue of the plan, I would argue that the plan was before the board, and the board they could have chosen to specifically reference the plan and say it's limited to only this plan, but they didn't. And there are decisions from that era that do that say exactly this plan. So to the extent they didn't, to me, trying to put this in a context, they weren't looking at it as if they were approving a specific plan, but they were approving the two-family use, for what that's worth. That's just my read, looking at decisions over the years and kind of how they all kind of fit together in context. As far as form of decision and so on, I think one way to deal with it is to say that these different conditions, stipulations, however you want to put it, basically these things all make the proposal consistent with the variance that was granted. So it's not just looking at what the actual plan is, it's looking at the plan plus the agreed upon conditions. That totality is then consistent with the spirit, language, and intent of the 1951 decision.
And so, following that line, we're not amending it. We're simply determining that it's consistent with. And I just went back and looked at the 2021 again. We called it a condition. We had a condition that they have vegetation.
Good enough.
Yeah. Mr. Schneider understood the board was not amending the variance, but making a finding that proposed new house is consistent with the two-family use established in the variance. And Mr. Junter concurred that a plan substitution was consistent. Mr. Schneider didn't think it should be a plan substitution, as there's no plan associated with the variance. Subject to the condition that the applicant will plant something, working with the neighbors to appropriate plantings of a height and nature to provide adequate screening, that it will revise plans and submit them with the board, showing the drainage system, allowing both drainage from the building and garage to either tie into the on-site system or, if required by the town, to the municipal system. Use best efforts to not disturb and destroy the tree in the front.
It's reasonable best effort.
Reasonable efforts.
I just say that
Reasonable.
because trees,
Trees?
older oak trees
Trees and
can be a
trees,
bit
sure.
difficult, and if it were me, I would not want to make any guarantees, because I've just seen too many times, even when developers made a good effort to preserve it, still the tree died. And then I've seen some instances where I thought for sure the developer's trying to kill the tree and the thing survived. So,
A fair point, I agree, reasonable efforts, yeah.
What about the maintenance of the plantings that are there now, the natural plantings?
I would leave that somewhat open, because as Eric said, the original thought was to leave what was there, but now there's a thought maybe to change that, and I think allow some breathability, if you will, a little bit of dynamic response, so that as the project moves forward, I know my client will be fine with putting some, a tree or two in, and it's kind of gonna be, that's the sort of thing that probably has to get decided in the field as it goes along. Basically back and forth between the parties. I know we had discussed leaving the existing vegetation, the mature vegetation intact, and I know my client's fine with that.
To the extent possible.
Yeah, and I know he's also fine with putting, some additional planting in too,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. So, given that, are you as comfortable as you can get?
I think that'd be a good way of putting it.
Okay. So, Valentin, can you vote on this one as well? Because Peter will be out of the country. So it'll be the three of us deciding and writing this decision.
Yes.
Okay. So would you like to make a motion?
Sure, let me try. So are we calling it a condition or are we calling it consistent? Thank you.
Subject to the condition is what we did back in 21.
Okay, so it says.
So, subject to the
plan substitution,
conditions.
So we don't want to use those. We want to actually say consistent with the variance.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at the 21, that'd be pretty good on the basis of the 21.
Okay. So I'd like to raise a motion for Needham Enterprise LLC, the owner that applied for a variance under 3.2.1 and any other applicable section of the Needham bylaw to seek a variance, a finding that the use is consistent with the previous variance, and for a two-family use and any and all other relief necessary and appropriate to permit the demolition of an existing two-family dwelling and replacement to a new two-family structure. This would be conditioned on
Pursuant to the plan submitted with the application.
pursuant to the plan submitted with the application and conditioned on trying to preserve the tree, the oak tree that's in existence, showing the plan that shows the drainage for the garage and the house, as well as working with the neighbors to find some sort of compromise on vegetation to create a screening. I think those are the three, right?
And that the applicant will submit to the board a revised plan showing the drainage when approved by the town and the plantings along the property line of the right or left neighbor, depending upon what you want to say. And let's get to this last condition. Any additional modifications, changes to the exterior of the property shall require the board's review and approval. Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, you can use the same condition that we have used before. No future changes from the approved plans to the exterior of the structure. A detached garage shall be allowed and no new accessory structures can be built without first obtaining the written approval of the board after such notice and hearing as the board in its sole discretion shall deem appropriate.
Perfect.
You can take it right out of the old decision.
Okay. So there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second to that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, neighbors.
Thank you.
And you will be the designated board member. Let's see.
But wait, he's back.
Great, just one more thing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good luck, good luck.
Do we have a time? 7:45, okay. Next on the list is the application of Tag Waggers Pet Care, Inc., applying for a special permit to allow the operation of a dog daycare boarding grooming business under section 3.6.2H at 6 Brook Road in the mixed-use 128 zoning district, and to waive strict adherence to the number of required parking spaces and the parking plan and design requirements under the bylaw. Good evening. Please introduce yourself and your clients or colleagues to the board.
All right. Good evening, members of the board. George Junta Jr. appearing on behalf of the applicant Tail Waggers. And with me this evening is Robin Toscano, who's the owner proprietor of the business, and Bill, is that Toscano? Eldridge, sorry. Bill Eldridge, who's the engineer of record for the project.
And Joseph Toscano is my brother and business partner.
All right. So this is actually a bit of a unusual, interesting case for the board. This is the first, this is a case of novel impression. So this is an application for the property at 6 Brook Road that's located in the mixed-use 128 zoning district. It's sort of just on the other side of 128. This property is at the corner of Wexford Street and Brook Road. It is a one-story commercial building that has been there since approximately 1966, built pursuant to building permit 6705. It was the building and the whole surrounding area was built around that time, and the building is actually part of a 3-building condominium project that consists of this building, now the building at 50 Brook Road, and the building at 56 Brook Road. But they're all separate standalone buildings, and the condominium basically treats them almost as if they were separate properties. It's kind of a funky, unusual condominium, but apparently it works well. So this building for over 20 years has been occupied by Chili Bears, which is a company that produces and manufactures various decorated apparel. They've been in there, so using the property for warehouse, manufacturing, retail purposes. Before Chili Bear, it was used by Anderson Machine Company for warehouse and manufacturing purposes. They were the original occupants in 1966 and had it for many years until Chili Bear came along. So since 2009, Robin has been operating a doggy daycare at 217 California Street in Newton. I don't know how many of the board members have dogs and maybe have the dogs enrolled in doggy daycare, but but if none of you do,
Does that give us a conflict?
depends if the daycare is located in Needham or not. If you're not familiar, doggy daycare is basically what it sounds like. It's essentially a daycare for dogs, although it also includes overnight boarding, which I'm sure some parents wish that regular daycares had that as well. But anyways, so the idea is Robin would like to expand her business and open a second location. She's done very well, basically, over the last roughly 15 years, and would like to open a second location and keep the business growing and going on. So the business involves both a day portion and a night portion. The daycare portion, dogs come in, they get dropped off in the morning, and they get picked up in the afternoon, just like a regular daycare. The night portion, the dogs come in, they get dropped off in the morning, and then they would stay overnight and get boarded overnight. Only dogs that are already enrolled in the day program can come in for overnight boarding.
Sounds like the swim school.
And yes, there are some similarities now that I think
We
about
spoke
it.
about that.
Yeah, only dogs that are enrolled in the daycare and have been in for some time can do it. But there's no, well, yeah, there is water involved actually too.
Little levity, my friend.
Yes. So the day portion of the business is open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the weekends.
Same hours as Newton, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Although to start with, the weekend hours won't be offered, but the idea is, once sort of enough clients get built up, then the weekend off hours will be offered. So we've added, so they're part of the application packet before you, but in all due candor, they're not going to be, that won't happen for a little bit of time. We definitely don't want to get into a situation where the use catches on and it expands and then exceeds the permit and we have to come back in again when we know there's a reasonable likelihood within a couple of years that we're gonna.
Well, we do our research, we do site visits, we check out Yelp, BBB, very good. Seems like you're very good with the reviews, so obviously if it works, it'll work.
Great, good to hear.
And the fact that it's been in business for so long, I mean, that's also, I know a couple of doggy daycares that opened and they were in for a couple of years and then went out. So the fact that it's
COVID.
so long. Well, actually, a lot of
I'm
people, COVID actually was great for doggy daycares. Yeah. So I'll give you the hours of operation. So pickups, so dogs are dropped off in the morning, I said. There is a limited window for pickup between 7 a.m. And 10 a.m., although I'm sure there are some stragglers from time to time. But pickups are then basically the rest of the day, sort of whenever. But based on the experience in the Newton location, Generally speaking, the pickups are between 3 and 7 in the afternoon. Weekend pickups are roughly between 3 and 5, but same morning pickups. Now, there will be a maximum of 100 dogs once the operation is in full swing and, is clicking on all cylinders. But it'll take some time to get up to that, and it's expected that for a while, the average is probably only going to be 60 to 75 dogs for the day program. The maximum at any given time in the overnight boarding or the night program is 50 dogs. Those 50 are included in the 100 day count. So at any given time, there would never be more than 100 dogs during the day, and at night there would never be more than 50 dogs. There's a maximum staff of 4 staff in order to keep a ratio of 1 staff to maximum 25 dogs. So maximum of 4 staff on site at any given time. And again, initially that probably will be 3 staff only because it'll take a bit of time to get up to speed and get the clientele list built up. So it'll start with 3 and ramp up to 4. One thing that distinguishes tail waggers from a lot of the other doggy daycares, they do not accept sort of entry-level staff. So right now their staff average age are between 28 to 45. They have, on average, have minimum of, well, they require a minimum of 3 years qualified experience. They prefer at least 5 years experience. So unlike some dog daycares that just will bring in young people just to kind of fill a warm body, this is a professional operation that really takes its charge seriously.
So can I just, as I have a question, when you get to daycare, childcare, senior care, there's regs, so you have 5,577 square feet and you have 100 dogs. Seems...
Absolutely. So the best practice is somewhere between 40 to 100 square feet per dog. And that's really for play space, but it depends on the size of the dog. It also depends on the dog's activity level. So, as simply as I can put it, 40 geriatric small dogs as opposed to 10 exuberant larger dogs, you're going to need different space requirements. But we take care of a wide variety of sizes as well as energy levels. Generally speaking, we only take about 15 to 20% of the dogs that we care for being high energy dogs. We do have a lot of dogs that join us for the entirety of their lives. So they'll start with us as puppies, and then by the time that they're 2, 3, 4 years old, they're just kind of hanging out. They're not romping around, bouncing off the walls. They just want to have somewhere to hang out and spend time with their friends. Their owners want them supervised and make sure that they're, hanging out, same thing, they're not sitting home alone all day while they're at work, and also ensures that they don't come home to an accident when they get home. So again, it's 100 dogs, it wouldn't be 100 rambunctious dogs running around bouncing off the walls at any given time. Generally speaking, we keep the rambunctious groups to about 8 to 10 maximum. And then the sedentary dogs can be in larger groups.
Just a couple questions. So are these dogs taken outside on walks?
Not on walks. We do have an outdoor yard space.
Oh, I see.
So yes, the risks of taking a dog outside of a fenced-in, enclosed area is just too great. So no, we don't do.
And so when the dogs socialize, I just could have dogs myself. And so are you putting them in a sort of a pen with other dogs? How do you?
They don't roam free like your dogs. Oh my God, they're dangerous.
I have a very small dog.
So it wouldn't be just one big open 5,000 square foot space for them. So we would have it sectioned off into different areas, which is actually the building already is essentially sectioned off as we would need it. So there's one large area which would be kind of the playroom, and then smaller areas which are kind of the restrooms. So we separate them by temperament. So like as I mentioned, the rough and tumble kind of rambunctious dogs, they go together, whereas the older, more sedentary dogs, they go together. And then it can change throughout the day too, because dogs show up in the morning and they're full of vinegar. As the day goes on, they start to calm down a little bit. They can go into one of the restrooms and relax and chill out, and then if one of the dogs who's in the more calm group decides that they want to get up and get feisty, then they can go into the feisty room and, go get their energy out.
And the restrooms are outside.
Yes. Yes. So we as we do in Newton, we would have an outdoor yard space for them to use.
And so the other
relieving
question
themselves.
was on the sort of flow, the drop off and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of think about kids drop offs, probably less complicated with animals, but how would that work very generally?
I'm sorry?
The drop-off.
So,
And pickup.
drop-offs, would be weekdays between 7 and 10. Generally speaking, we run it very quickly. People have got to get to work. So, people come in, they unleash their dog, the dog comes in behind the counter, and we put the dog in the appropriate space. The person is out the door. We do rely on Nest cameras so that we can see from inside who's approaching the building. So we use walkie-talkies. We say, Pete's going home, and Pete's dad comes in, and before Pete's dad even walks in the building, we've got Pete at the front desk ready to go. And it takes just as long as it takes him to put Pete's leash on, he's out the door. Our customers have become very accustomed to our very expedient pickup and drop-offs. Generally speaking, the only time that somebody lingers for a little while is if it's the dog's first day. And that we only do one or two if it's two dogs within the same family, but we'll only take one new dog on any given day. And again, usually that's only a 5-minute conversation of, he did well, because usually we cover that over the phone around lunchtime. Your dog's doing well, acclimating great. If the dog isn't doing well, we call right away and they get picked up and they go home.
Vanished.
We cherry pick, we definitely do.
Did you feed the animals?
So we do feed puppies that are under 6 months if they're there during the day for daycare. Dogs that are over 6 months, we do reserve feeding for dogs that have a medical reason for feeding. Otherwise, we just ask their owners to feed them before they arrive. Obviously, the dogs that stay overnight with us, yes, we do feed them. In just breakfast and dinner, lunch for puppies.
And what about grooming?
So we do have a grooming salon in Newton. We would probably put in a tub for, the emergency dog soiled, that got soiled. Sometimes dogs like to roll and stuff. If we need to do a quick rinse, we would eventually probably like to add full service grooming, but same thing. It's very quick and expedient, drop off and they're out the door. But that's not in the immediate plans for sure. That's kind of, again, we would add a tub just for the dog needs to be rinsed off before they go home.
What would you do in a medical situation? Would you call, are you gonna have a relationship with a vet?
Yes, so Veterinary Emergency Group on Needham Street is the closest emergency room, which we actually already have a relationship with them. So if it is, depends on the severity of the situation. If it's an emergency that the dog needs to go to the emergency room, we have a permission for care waiver. So generally speaking, I'm calling the owner while I'm already in the car on the way.
We're on our way down to the emergency.
Exactly.
And Veg is actually, I think it's only like 4 minutes down the street.
It's
so
right down the street.
Yeah, and it's 24-hour facility.
Yeah.
So if the owner had a preferred facility, I would bring them to that facility, obviously. But default is just go to the closest one.
Good. You couldn't have something closer.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you could, but it's pretty close. Can I just ask you about parking for a second? And I know you want to get into parking. So the building inspector has equated your use to be something different than what you've equated it to be, and came up with 16 spaces when you say it's 14. So please address that one.
Yes. So this category is not in the bylaw, or this use is not in the bylaw. It doesn't fit clearly within any of the categories. So initially,
But it's a permitted use. But they
so
didn't-
it's
By special.
it's yes,
By special.
and in fact, so let me actually go on a little bit of a tangent on that then.
Yeah, sure.
So pre-2017, you could only do boarding of animals in the general business district. The general business district was limited really to the Millennium Plaza, which is where Bertucci's was, and there's another few little pockets of really small areas. So for a practical matter, there was really only one kind of area you could have it. And in fact, at one point, there was I think it was the Needham Animal Hospital, was located in the back corner of that plaza where the hockey lacrosse sporting goods store is.
Hockey.
It was in the back corner,
your
you accessed down the pathway and went in that way. Eventually, that veterinary practice moved over to Wellesley Avenue in a variance amendment. That was a pure amendment when they built the new facility there, and they boarded, and they have as a part of that the ability to board up to a certain number of animals with their practice. So basically though, up until 2017, it was really first that one location, and then because of the variance amendment the new location, and that was it. So in 2017, we went to the town meeting and got the bylaw changed to specifically allow for boarding of animals not necessarily related to convalescent stays or basically veterinary treatment, to allow for exactly and specifically this type of use. And when they allowed it specifically in this zoning district. So this is exactly where it's supposed to go, and the use is allowed by special permit.
But they didn't address parking.
They did not provide a parking standard, yes. Which, this is the thing with new uses, it's quite often that we don't change the parking table. We'd probably have to, at this point, have 20 new categories to meet things. And generally, we kind of have a process that seems to work for the most part. So we looked at it, and we said, well, within the categories, the existing categories, the closest kind of is manufacturing, maybe, sort of. And manufacturing is 1 parking space for 400 square feet. When you do the math, that comes up to 14 spaces required. Now, Robin, having a lot of experience in Newton, did some counts with respect to people coming in with their dogs. I provided a little summary table with my memo, and with that, she broke it down, I broke it down based on hourly, so like from 7 to 8, from 8 to 9, 9 to 10. And if you do that, the numbers you get are a little bit higher, but that's over the course of an hour, so it's a wider spread. In anticipation for tonight, I actually broke it down a little bit more, and I broke it down into 10-minute increments. And if you break down drop-offs in 10-minute increments, the most drop-offs that you get at any given time is 8, and that only happens like twice over the course of a week. The averages going from 7 a.m. to 10:20 in 10-minute intervals are 1, 5, 3, 5, 4, 3, 3, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. I went through this quick, but you can just tell from that really the average number of cars that are coming in, because the average number of drop-offs that are happening at any given 10-minute period on average is no more than 5. So in practice, whether it is 14 or 16 or whatever other number, in practice, generally speaking, on average, it's not going to be more than 5 spaces required.
So you don't have a problem following the building inspectors?
It's okay, because it works in this case, but I do have one issue. So I actually talked to him after I saw that, and he did his calculation based on 7,000 square feet.
Where'd that come from?
The building is 5577. If you include the outdoor play space, it's about 7,000 square feet. So in talking with him, it seemed that that's probably what he did, is he included the outdoor play space. I don't know that you necessarily should include the outdoor play space, but then again, there's not a set category, so I don't know that there's a clear right or wrong here. I also did provide, as a part of my memo, the section from the American Planning Association. They have a pamphlet that they put out a few years back that is basically like a survey collection of different parking standards for a number of different uses, including an awful lot of uses that aren't sort of well established in different zoning ordinances. And if you look through that, I mean, basically it's quite a range. But the range, whether you do the manufacturing range or if you do this, 14 spaces, 16 spaces, is kind of within the range. So again, it almost doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because we have 16 spaces available. There's 6 parking spaces on Brook Road, right in front of the front door. And then there's 10 parking spaces on Wexford Street, along that side of the building.
My point is that I thought the child daycare use made more sense than manufacturing, George.
It probably does.
But it doesn't matter since
we have enough. Okay. I would say, I mean, from just a purely, purely kind of general thing, yes, it probably does. But I think the numbers for daycare, partly because of the inherent dynamics of daycare, overstate the parking demand versus the dynamics of dog daycare. Because I think dog daycare drop-offs and pickups are a lot quicker, like several orders of magnitude quicker than child drop-offs and pickups.
And medical and dental.
Even way quicker than that, right? So I think it's analogous, but it's not exactly a one-to-one. So I think it serves as a useful guide, and it kind of gives an idea, but I actually think probably 14 is closer to what it actually is, and based on the numbers, I actually think it's probably somewhere at most 8 to 10.
But the outdoor play space,
But there's no additional, there's no additional dogs for that, so I don't know. It's
You don't take into account the playground at the daycare, so.
No,
I think we have. Anyway, we can deliberate on that.
So, yeah, I mean, and again, at the end of the day, whether it's 5, 8, 14, 16, the 16 spaces available, so there's enough spaces, there's enough parking.
Sort of want to be consistent for the next one.
Yep.
So George, you mentioned early on that this is part of a condominium association. Is there any restriction on the parking?
So there is no restriction on the parking. There are certain spaces that are exclusive just to specific buildings. But as a practical matter, the way these spaces are laid out, some of these spaces are explicitly just for this building, and some are general, but they're not used by the other buildings because they're in front of this building, and the other buildings are sort of around the corner and down the street.
That's what I was gonna ask you about it from the picture. I mean, you stopped counting the 16, but the row of spaces at the back of the building.
Those are,
That's
for the adjacent property.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
off your property?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not entirely clear just on the overhead. It's
Those are for the kitchen and bath, basically.
yeah, there's basically a fence that goes along that side, and those spaces are all for the adjacent property. They're not for this property. But if you kind of come around Brook Road, and as you come up Brook Road, after this building, the next building is an L-shaped building, and they have a bunch of spaces out in front of their building, kind of that wrap around the L, and then around the front, and then sort of the front bit of that. Then there's another building, and they have spaces kind of around their building. So it says, so technically all 3 buildings are part of the condo, but I don't think anybody's gonna park out in front of this building and then go walk all the way up the street for the back building. And the L building has a good amount of parking around it as well, so I don't think they would come here. So we basically have to do some.
Can you submit your parking analysis for the
Oh,
record?
sure.
I had a question on the grooming. I know you said you're not gonna be doing that business right away, but if you were to do it, is that limited just to current dogs that are part of the daycare, or it's also open to outside use as well?
It would probably be open to outside use as well.
There's 5 copies there.
George, is
Well, that being
grooming
said,
included in the use?
majority, so in practice in Newton, majority of the dogs that join us for grooming do get groomed out of daycare. There are a handful of dogs that, don't go to daycare, they don't get along with other dogs or something like that, so we wouldn't, exclude those dogs from being groomed, since they wouldn't be in the play group, but realistically, it is the vast majority of them in practice are being groomed out of daycare. Our customers really like that they can drop their dog off on the way to work, the dog goes and plays, and then they pick the dog up nice and clean at the end of the day. Fridays especially, people get a clean dog for a Friday.
Well, it looks like it's an interesting use and it's a proper location. Seems like you've got a good handle on the animals. And, being a dog lover myself, that sometimes when you get a lot of dogs together, you have to be careful. It sounds like you've got the way to identify different groups of animals and an outdoor area for use, but not on the street. So it looks like it's a nice proposal.
Thank you.
See, it's not like a comma.
There is a comment. The bylaw been allowed training sitting, but not standing, not rolling over. So there's some restrictions of what you can do.
All right, I will keep the training to sit only.
Came from town meeting, right?
Yeah.
Planning board?
If I can go back to parking, just one thing I want to, about parking. So, even under the 16, there's 16 spaces, but all this parking was put in place in 1966, and as you can imagine, and probably you've been out there, this parking does not comply with barely any aspect of the design requirements.
You're not gonna upgrade it?
So, no.
All right.
No changes at all, the exterior of the building or the parking,
So you're looking variant?
so we've asked for a waiver
Waiver.
from the design requirements, yes.
Let's call it raised.
And we don't, I called out the general categories, but I don't have specific numbers, but I think probably for this purpose, given the longstanding nature of the parking, that would be sufficient.
Okay. I'd like to read to the record some of the public department comments. The planning board had no comment. The building commissioner submitted his letter August 6th. You've seen it. He believed that 16 parking spaces are required and gave it 7,000 square foot, including the outdoor area. Public Health Department gave a lot. So you look at all the requirements, and I'm not going to read it, but it's their memo August 5th, quite detailed. Police had no issues. Fire department had no issues, and the Department of Public Work had no comment or objection. Planning had no comment. I read that one.
Oh, okay.
It was very clear, no comment. Anybody here in the room have any comments? There's no one in the room, so there's no one has any comments. Anyone out there in Zoom?
We have one hand raised.
Okay.
And we'll promote them as panelists. And when, what's it time?
Hi there.
Hi.
My name is Diane Quinn, and I just wanted to comment on behalf of Tail Waggers. My family has been a customer.
Diane.
Yes.
Where do you live?
I live
What's your address?
I live in Wellesley, and
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'm only teasing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so I'm not a Needham resident, but I do want to comment as a long-standing customer of Tail Waggers. We've been customers of Tail Waggers for about 10 years now. And I just wanted to echo the fact that this is a professional operation that takes its charge seriously. We have had 3 of our dogs be hosted at Tail Waggers over 10 years. That ranges from puppies to adolescent dogs to geriatric dogs to very geriatric dogs, and also a dog with a serious medical condition. And I think the main thing that I can say about Tail Waggers is that we trust our family members to them, and we recommend them highly to anyone we talk to. So I just wanted to make sure that I raised those comments for you today.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything else, George, applicants?
Unless there's any further questions from the board?
Okay, so, do you have questions?
Do you have another, you have another person?
Sure.
All right. I'll promote. Oh.
Let me know before I close the next meeting. Let me know.
Trey has been promoted.
Hi there, my name is Trey Duvall, and we are clients of Tail Waggers, and I'm actually Pete's dad. So when Robin said Pete's dad is seen, he comes in, picks up Pete, and comes out. That's me, and we are huge fans of Tail Waggers. We've been clients for about a year. We rescued a dog after having our 12-year-old dogs pass away, and didn't anticipate that he would have as much energy as he does. And we would be lost without Tail Waggers. That's the absolute truth. So they're a fantastic organization. I know there was a lot of talk about parking, and what was said is absolutely true. I'm in and out in about less than 5 minutes. And Joe and Robin and the whole staff there are fantastic. So I just wanted to join as Pete's dad and say, please consider their proposal, because they're a great organization. We are Newton residents, but we
Thank you,
live.
sir. You're a Newton resident, so Pete's dad is a Newton resident, let the record know. Thank you. I'm only teasing.
And we're kind of a Newton South, so Needham, I shop at the Needham Trader Joe's.
Needham adjacent, they're Needham adjacent.
All right.
We spend a lot of time in Needham.
Not tonight. We do have quite a few that are from Needham, though.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you for your involvement.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else out there, Daphne?
Looks like we don't have any more hands raised.
You get Wellesley, you get Newton.
Oh, wait, we have an Alex Evelyn?
Yes, I'm a Needham resident, so I can
Oh.
claim to fame can be a Needham person. I can't echo what's been said enough. Our dog Dorothy's been there for 6 years. We took her when she was 6 months old. When my wife and I were going to work, and I wouldn't say she's at the age now where she doesn't need it, but she loves it. And just a peace of mind knowing that she's in safe hands is what both my wife and I are educators, and knowing that we don't have to rush home to get our dog out, let her out, it is peace of mind we need. I can't tell you enough. They vet their dogs. It is a professional business, but they care for their dogs. Robin has been an ear for both my wife and I. Dorothy was going through some GI stuff for a couple of years, and she didn't need to, respond to my messages, in the evening, but she did because she cares about the dogs that are there. They're both Joe and her are professional. It would be a great asset to the Needham community to bring this business in. So please seriously consider them.
Thank you very much. Before I close, any questions before I close the public hearing?
No.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and now deliberate. I just wanted to go for the record before, is that this should have been discussed at the beginning of the hearing, is that this hearing is being taped.
Yep.
We
knew.
Under the open meeting law, we're taping it, it's being on the cable cast, and so I neglected to do that at the beginning. So you guys now know.
Okay.
Peter.
I've had dogs for 30 years, and I wish I had sent some of them to daycare. In retrospect, I think it sounds like a great operation.
Thank you. Thank you. My puppy is there right now, so.
I just marvel that 4 people can potentially handle 100 dogs.
Well, again, not all rambunctious dogs.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Not all sometimes it takes a handful to take, like I said, to take care of just the handful of crazies.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that. Yeah. No,
That's
I think
part
it
of why
sounds-
we cherry pick the dogs that we take care of.
I think it sounds.
Howard?
I think it's a great idea. I like the location. You guys are great operators. Your clients authenticated that. So I'm excited. Like Peter, I'm a dog lover and haven't used this concept, but I actually live close by. But I think it's a great concept, and you're right off of 128. So I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you.
No comments? My only comment is I think it's a wonderful concept. You have a great reputation. We lost our dog, one of our dogs Saturday.
I'm
So
so
it's
sorry.
very
Oh my
emotional.
gosh.
Yeah, and Veg was awesome.
They
They're
are.
a tremendous place. And there's a cardiologist, unfortunately, he's right next door to Veg. So anyway, I think it's a great concept. I think you've done everything that this community would like to see in an applicant and in a presentation. I'm glad town meeting allowed the use. It's a necessary use. It's a wonderful use, and you guys are very caring people. So at that point, I'd entertain a motion.
Thank you. Move that the applicant's request for a special permit to allow the operation of a dog daycare boarding grooming business under sections 3262H. So that's a special permit for the use. And second, some request for waiver of the strict adherence to the number of parking, George, as well as the design of parking, and that motion be approved.
Conditioned on the hours of operation as they've proposed. It's a litany of hours and days and times and things like that. But if that's acceptable.
And also, yes, I certainly adopt that amendment. Also that the strict requirements of the healthcare department.
Of course.
That they seem to really have specific input that I'm confident that you'll work with
Yes,
them.
things
to
that
make
we
sure
already
this is a
complied
nice
with in
project.
Newton, so I was actually very impressed that their comments were so comprehensive. So, yeah, no, I think it's great.
And I think I'd like to state that I would treat this as 16, our finding is 16 spaces needed. Any problems there? Anybody? No. Okay.
Accept that amendment.
Okay. So at that point, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Welcome to Needham.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So what's your turnaround time? Hope it'll be open by September?
We will likely be in the building, lease commencement will likely be November 1st, and then we will be able to begin renovations and hoping by the new year, maybe. I mean, there's really not a ton that we need to do to renovate. Basically, rip out the carpet and put in epoxy. That's the main
Great
thing.
location, 128 exits are right there, so you get people from all over.
Exactly, and like in Newton, there's also a lot of businesses nearby. There, so, and I know that there's biotech going in where old Muzzy Ford used to be. So, a lot of people drop off near their work, not necessarily near their home, too. So, I think that we'll also be able to serve those businesses.
And I think there's actually another vet across the street from Veg and the cardiologist. You're like in the animal medical area.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's three places. Anyway, congratulations.
Thank you very much, all, for your time.
Do
Thank
we
you.
have anything else on our agenda? No. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn.
Okay, nice to see everybody. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Enjoy Italy.
Thank you. Good on.
I'll be working on my handicap.
You'll be working on your